Silence. Utter, deafening silence. Then a single, heart-rending wail rose from Zainab's tent, piercing the stillness. Husayn, who had watched the horror unfold, stood frozen for a moment, his face ashen. He took a step toward the fallen figure of his brother, then another, his own grief a physical weight. He reached Abbas as the life ebbed from him. Kneeling, he cradled his brother's head. "Now my back is broken," Husayn whispered, raw pain stripping his voice bare. "My strength is gone." Abbas's eyes, clouded with pain, found his brother's face. A faint tremor, perhaps an attempt at a smile, touched his lips before they stilled. The lion of Ali, the water-bearer, was gone. The trampled water skins lay nearby, their precious contents soaking uselessly into the blood-stained sand of Karbala. The enemy ranks, momentarily stunned by the ferocity and the tragedy of Abbas's end, began to murmur again. But it wasn't triumph in the air. It was a cold, creeping dread. They had killed the brother, the standard-bearer, the one who came only for water. What justification remained? What honor? Back in the camp, the wailing intensified. Sukaina, hearing the news, tore from Zainab's grasp and stumbled toward the edge of the camp. "AMU Abbas!" she shrieked, her small voice raw with terror and loss, staring blindly toward the spot where her uncle had fallen. Husayn, returning alone, his brother's blood staining his cloak, gathered her trembling form. He held her tight, his own tears mingling with the dust on her hair. He looked out at the sea of hostile faces, then down at the child in his arms, her body racked with sobs and thirst. The sun beat down merciless. The river still glinted, impossibly far away. The siege had claimed its first beloved martyr, and the thirst, physical and spiritual, was now an unendurable fire consuming them all from within. The true horror was only beginning. The silence after Abbas's fall was a living thing, thick, suffocating, heavy with the iron scent of his blood, and the dust stirred by his final charge. In the camp, grief was a physical blow. Sukaina's raw sobs echoed, a sharp counterpoint to the muffled weeping of the women. Husayn stood, Abbas's blood darkening the shoulder of his cloak, holding his inconsolable niece. His gaze, when it finally lifted from the child's trembling form, swept across the enemy lines. It wasn't fury, not yet. It was a profound, soul-crushing weariness, etched with a question that hung in the parched air. Is this your victory? Killing a man fetching water for infants? Days bled into nights under the siege's cruel yoke. Umar, son of Sa'ad, commander of Yazid's forces, arrived with the bulk of the army, transforming the cordon around Karbala into an impenetrable wall of steel and malice. Thousands upon thousands of soldiers, their banners fluttering like vultures' wings, surrounded the tiny enclave of tents. The order was absolute. Not a drop of water was to reach the camp of the Prophet's grandson. The Euphrates, its life-giving flow, a shimmering mirage just visible beyond the enemy ranks, became a constant, agonizing torment. The sun, Karbala's merciless jailer, climbed higher each day, its heat reflecting off the pale sand, turning the camp into an oven. The air grew thick with the stench of unwashed bodies, despair, and the metallic tang of dread. Inside the tents, the suffering was acute. The children, Sukaina's pleas for water dwindled into weak whimpers. Her lips were cracked, swollen, her tiny tongue swollen in her mouth. Fatima Kubra, older, tried to be brave, offering sips from an empty cup to her younger cousins. Ali Alisker's cries became weaker, rasping gasps that tore at his mother Rabab's heart. His fever raged, his tiny body dehydrating, his eyes losing focus. The women, Zainab moved among them, a pillar of strength amidst crumbling fortresses. She rationed non-existent water, offered prayers, wiped brows with dry cloths, her own throat burning. Kulthum tended the sick, her hands gentle but trembling with exhaustion and suppressed grief. The sight of their children wasting away was a slow crucifixion. The men, thirst gnawed at their resolve, weakening limbs already strained by constant vigilance. They patrolled the small perimeter, their eyes scanning the hostile lines, their swords never far. Husayn moved constantly among them, his presence a wellspring of fortitude in the desert of their despair. He shared their thirst, their vigil, his own grief for Abbas, a raw wound beneath the armor of leadership. Omar, son of Saad, under pressure from the ruthless son of Ziyad in Kufa, made one last attempt to break Husayn without battle. Messengers rode forward under a flag of truce. The governor demands only your allegiance to Yazid. O Husayn, the envoy called out, his voice carrying across the silent, baking plain. Swear fealty, and you and your household shall be granted safe passage. Water will flow to your tents this very hour. Husayn stepped forward, facing the envoy and the vast army beyond. Though his frame was gaunt from thirst and grief, his voice rang out clear and unwavering, cutting through the haze like a blade. Allegiance. The word was laced with sorrow that dwarfed anger. Allegiance to one who openly mocks the laws of God, who fills his court with drunkards and squanders the wealth of the Muslims on his pleasures, who persecutes the righteous and elevates the corrupt. He paused, letting the indictment hang. Do you not see the children dying of thirst behind me? Is this the justice Yazid offers? Is this the Islam he upholds? I will never yield my hand in the hand of a tyrant. Never. If death is a price for refusing to bow to falsehood, then welcome, O death! The envoy shifted uncomfortably. Some soldiers in the front ranks looked down, unable to meet Husayn's piercing gaze. The offer wasn't just refused. It was shattered against the rock of his unyielding principle. The truce ended. The siege tightened. As the sun beat down relentlessly on the 9th day of Muharram, the air crackled with impending doom. The enemy ranks stirred, formations shifting, weapons glinting. The final assault was being prepared. Seeing this, Husayn gathered a small band of loyal companions, less than 100 men, boys, and elderly scholars against an ocean of swords. My brothers, he addressed them, his voice thick with emotion but resonant with conviction. The time is near. Tomorrow, God willing, we shall meet our Lord. They desire only me. If you choose to leave under the cover of darkness, go with my blessing and gratitude. You owe me nothing more. Your loyalty has already been proven beyond measure. A murmur rippled through the group, not of fear, but defiance. Then, one by one, they stepped forward. First was Muslim son of Al-Sajjah, an elderly companion whose face was etched with the lines of a lifetime of faith, now gaunt from thirst. He leaned on his spear, but his eyes burned. Leave? By God, O son of the messenger, shall I live after you? Never. I fought alongside your father and brother. My sword is old, but my arm is still true for you. Let my dust mingle with yours. His voice, though weak, carried the strength of mountains. Husayn embraced him, the gesture profound. May God have mercy on you, O Muslim. You were ever faithful. Next came Habib, son of Mutahir, a poet warrior whose loyalty was legendary. He had been Husayn's companion since Medina. His eyes, usually bright with wit, were now fierce with tears of resolve. My master, Husayn, by the one who sent Muhammad with the truth, I would rather die 1,000 deaths than see a single harm touch you while breath remains in my body. To abandon you, that would be to abandon the messenger himself. I strike with my sword for you until it breaks. Then I fight with stones for you until my soul departs. He drew his sword, the steel singing in the dry air a silent vow. Husayn clasped his shoulder. O Habib, you are the brother I never had by birth, but always by spirit. Paradise awaits you. Others followed. Zuhair, son of Al-Kain, the nobleman who had joined them on the road. John Hurst Friedman, whose devotion transcended origin. Burair, son of Qudair, the aged scholar whose knowledge was now matched by his courage. Young Qasim, son of Hassan, Husayn's nephew, burning with a desire to prove his valor. Each pledged their life, their blood, to stand with him until the end. There were no deserters, only lions ready to roar one last time. As dusk painted the sky in shades of blood and ash, the camp prepared for the final night. Husayn ordered the few remaining tents pulled closer together, creating a fragile barrier. He moved among his family, his touch gentle, his words soothing the terror he saw in their eyes, especially the children's. He spent long hours in prayer, a solitary figure kneeling on the hard earth, his silhouette outlined against the watchfires of the enemy. His supplications at night, whispered into the vast, uncaring darkness, were a tapestry of submission remembrance, and a fierce plea for strength and protection for those he would leave behind. He visited the small group of companions gathered near their mounts, checking their meager armor, sharing words of encouragement and farewell. He stopped beside the shrouded form of Abbas, laying a hand on the rough cloth. "Forgive me, brother," he murmured, his voice barely audible. "Your sacrifice will echo until the day of judgment." Later, he sat with his eldest son, Ali al-Akbar. The young man was a very image of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. In his youth, tall, handsome, radiating nobility even in exhaustion. Husayn looked at him, a father's pride warring with unbearable grief. "My son," he said, his voice thick, "tomorrow you will stand with me. You resemble the Prophet most of all. When they see you, they will remember him. Let your courage be your sermon." Ali al-Akbar met his father's gaze, his own eyes shining with unwavering faith. "I am ready, father. To fight by your side is all I desire." As the deepest hour of the night settled over Karbala, a profound, eerie stillness descended. The wind died. The enemy campfires seemed to dim. Even the children's whimpers had subsided into exhausted silence. Only the sound of ragged breaths and the occasional clink of armor broke the quiet. Husayn stood at the edge of his camp, looking out at the sea of hostile lights. He knew the names of those who would fall tomorrow. He saw their faces, heard their final pledges. The weight of it all, the thirst, the grief, the impending slaughter of those he loved most, pressed upon him like the desert mountains. Yet, within that crushing weight, a single unwavering flame burned, the flame of truth, refusing to be extinguished. He closed his eyes, whispering into the stillness, "O God, it is in you that I trust in hardship and ease. Hear my prayer, and let not my enemies rejoice over me." Dawn, the 10th of Muharram month, ASHURA, was coming. It would be written in blood. The eerie stillness of that final night shattered with the first gray fingers of dawn clawing across the eastern horizon. ASHURA, the 10th of Muharram. The air, thick with unshed tears and the acrid smell of fear, seemed to crystallize. From a vast enemy encampment, the ominous beat of war drums began, a deep, rhythmic thudding that vibrated through parched earth and into the bones of besieged. Trumpets blared, harsh and commanding. The metallic rasp of thousands of swords being drawn simultaneously was a chilling chorus. Omar, son of Saad's army, a dark, seething mass, began its advance, tightening the noose around a tiny camp. Husayn stood before his small band, less than 100 souls against the tide. The grief for Abbas was a fresh wound, the thirst of raging fire, but his voice, when he spoke, was clear as mountain spring water cutting through the clamor. "Rise, O bearers of truth, for prayer. May God make it your last and best in this world. They are distracted by bloodshed, but we are distracted by him." He led the morning prayer, his companions forming rows behind him, their faces etched with exhaustion but luminous with faith. Even as arrows began to fall like deadly rain around the prayer lines, embedding themselves in the earth near their feet, thudding into the flimsy tents, not a single man broke his posture. Their submission in that moment, facing annihilation, was their ultimate defiance. As the prayer ended, the enemy's vanguard surged forward, a wave of steel intent on overwhelming the camp in one brutal rush. Husayn raised his hand. "Patience, O sons of the noble. Death is but a bridge crossing you from hardship and misery to vast gardens and eternal bliss. Which of you does not yearn to meet his Lord?" His gaze swept over his loyal companions. "Who will answer the call of the son of the daughter of your prophet?" The response was immediate. Like arrows loose from a single bow, his champion stepped forward, not to defend passively, but to challenge the oncoming horde. They would meet death on their feet, buying precious moments, etching their valor into eternity. Ali al-Akbar, Husayn's eldest son, was the first to seek permission. He was radiant, noble, the very echo of the prophet, peace be upon him, in his prime. "Father, allow me. My soul yearns for paradise." Husayn looked upon his beloved son, the image of his grandfather, and felt his heart tear. He embraced him, inhaling the scent of his hair, his tears mingling with the dust on Ali's cheek. "Go, my son, with my blessing. But know that by your death my back is broken, my strength shattered." He helped Ali mount his horse, tightening the girth with trembling hands, a father's last act of care. Ali Al-Akbar charged. He was a whirlwind of light and steel. His sword flashed, a streak of silver against the dull bronze of the enemy. He fought with the grace of a dancer and the ferocity of a lion, cutting through the front ranks. His voice rang out, clear and challenging. I am Ali, son of Husayn, son of Ali. By the house of God, we are the ones most deserving of the Prophet. Men fell before him, astonished by his beauty and his deadly skill. He carved a path deep into the enemy lines, a beacon of courage. But the tide was too vast, the numbers overwhelming. A spear found his side. He swayed, blood blooming on his white tunic. Another spear struck his chest. He fell from his horse, calling out, his voice weakening but still clear. Father, my salams, my farewell. This is my grandfather, the messenger, giving me water. He collapsed onto bloodied sand. A wail, raw and primal, tore from Husayn's throat. He surged forward like a wounded lion, sword drawn, scattering the enemy soldiers who were descending on his fallen son. He reached Ali Al-Akbar, cradling the lifeless body, his tears falling onto the still, handsome face. He gathered his son in his arms and carried him back toward the camp, stumbling under the weight of his grief, arrows whistling past him, clattering off his armor. He laid Ali gently beside the shrouded form of Abbas. After Ali, let the heavens fall upon the earth, he whispered, his voice a broken thing. Oh, God, bear witness. Sukaina rushed forward, throwing herself on her cousin's body, her small hand stained with his blood, her cries piercing the morning air. Next came Qasim, son of Hassan, Husayn's young nephew, barely into adolescence. He approached his uncle, eyes bright with fervor. Uncle, is it not my turn? Let me fight. Let me avenge my cousins. Husayn looked at the boy, remembering the promise he made to Qasim's father, his brother Hassan. He embraced him tightly. How can I send you, child? Your father entrusted you to me. But Qasim insisted, his youthful voice trembling with conviction. Am I not the son of a martyr? Am I not of the house of the Prophet? Let me die with honor. Husayn, his heart breaking anew, finally nodded. He helped Qasim don a makeshift armor, far too large for his slender frame. He tied a cloth around the boy's waist to hold it up. Qasim mounted a horse and charged, a small, defiant figure against the endless ranks. He fought bravely, surprising the enemy with his spirit, but he was quickly surrounded. A blow from a mace struck his head. He fell, dazed. As enemy soldiers closed in for the kill, he cried out, Uncle, to me. Husayn exploded forward once more, a force of pure grief and rage, scattering the attackers like chaff. He reached Qasim just as the boy breathed his last. Husayn lifted the small, broken body. The cloth belt snapped, the oversized armor slipping away. Husayn carried his nephew back, the boy's feet dragging in the dust, a sight so pitiful that even hardened enemy soldiers turned their faces away, murmurs of shame rising. He laid Qasim beside Ali and Abbas. Zainab rushed to cover the small form, her own composure cracking as she sobbed over the nephew who was like a son. Then came the turn of the loyal companions, stepping forward one by one into maw death, fulfilling their vows. Muslim son of Al-Sajjah, the elderly companion, leaned heavily on his spear, but advanced with unwavering steps. He fought with the strength of a man half his age, his faith fueling his tired limbs. He fell under a hail of arrows and spears, his body riddled. His gaze fixed on the camp until the light faded. Farewell, O son of the Prophet. His last whisper was lost in the din. Habib, son of Mutahir, the poet-warrior, fought like a man possessed. He sang verses of courage and faith even as he struck down foes. He was overwhelmed, pulled from his horse, and cut down. His last word were a cry of loyalty. Husayn, I die loving you. Zuhair, son of Al-Kain, charged deep into the enemy, cutting down several champions before being encircled and martyred. John, Eunice/Hers freedman, fought fiercely near the tents, protecting the women and children until his last breath. Burer, son of Qudair, the aged scholar, raised his sword with trembling hands, his knowledge now his armor. He fell, reciting verses from the Quran. One by one, the lions fell. Aun and Muhammad, the young sons of Zainab, barely more than boys, charged together, falling side by side in a final, desperate act of defense. The ground around the camp became a tapestry of sacrifice, each fallen hero a testament to unbreakable loyalty. The enemy, despite their overwhelming numbers, hesitated before each new challenger, stunned by the sheer, suicidal courage. By noon, the camp's defenders were decimated. Only a handful remained standing near the tents. The women and children were exposed, the sounds of their weeping a constant, agonizing backdrop to the clash of steel. Husayn, his cloak soaked with the blood of his sons and brothers, moved among the few remaining men, his face a mask of profound sorrow and unshakable resolve. The sun beat down mercilessly. The thirst was inferno, and the enemy ranks, sensing the end, pressed closer, their shouts growing more rabid. Then a new sound pierced a horror. The weak, gasping cry of Ali Alisker, Husayn's 6-month-old infant, dying of thirst and heat in his mother Rabab's arms. The pitiful sound cut through the battle clamor. Husayn looked toward the tent, then out at the sea of hostile faces. A desperate, fatherly impulse seized him. He walked toward the enemy lines, carrying the infant wrapped in a thin cloth, away from the immediate fighting. He held the tiny bundle aloft, his voice raw with anguish yet commanding attention. "O people, if you deem me guilty, what crime has this infant committed? If you seek revenge against me, let this child at least have water. He is dying of thirst." For a moment, a hush fell. Some soldiers lowered their weapons, shame flickering on their faces. But from the ranks, Harman, son of Al-Kalbi, under orders, drew his bow. The arrow, cruelly barbed, hissed through the air. It struck the infant's tiny, exposed throat with a sickening thud. Ali Alisker gave one final, choked gasp, his small body convulsing in his father's arms before falling still. The arrow protruding obscenely. A collective gasp, part horror, part disbelief, rippled through both sides. Husayn stared at the lifeless child in his arms. The world seemed to stop. His hand trembled as he cupped it beneath the tiny neck, filling his palm with his infant son's blood. He raised his crimson hand toward the heavens, his voice a roar of anguish and indictment that shook the very plain of Karbala. "O God, be my witness against them. Judge between us and this people who have called us, so that they may help us and then killed us." He looked down at the blood in his hand, then cast it upwards toward the sky. "Let not a drop of this blood touch the earth before you witness what they have done to us." He carried the tiny, arrow-pierced body back to the camp. The women's wails reached a new crescendo of unbearable grief. Rabab collapsed, clutching her murdered child. Zainab rushed to take the infant, her own composure utterly shattered as she rocked the small body. Sukaina stared, wide-eyed with trauma, unable to comprehend the depth of the atrocity. Husayn stood amidst the carnage, his sons, his brother, his nephews, his loyal companions, now his infant son, all martyred before his eyes. The camp was surrounded, the enemy pressing in. Sensing the final act, he looked at his sister Zainab, her face ravaged by tears but a fierce light still burning in her eyes. He looked at the few remaining men, wounded but resolute. He looked at the body of Ali Alisker, so small, so brutally silenced. The scorching wind swept across the blood-soaked sands, carrying the stench of sweat, smoke, and iron. The sun hung like a blazing orb in the cloudless sky, its merciless rays beating down upon the ruptured earth. Tattered banners lay abandoned in the dust. Countless bodies littered the ground. Only one figure remained standing, truly amid the sea of fallen souls.